PowerPoint. Best worst case scenario for every Eastern Conference team. This was a difficult one. There's a lot more competitive teams in the East than in years past. When I say competitive, I mean fighting for that 4th, 5th, 6th seed. I can see a lot of different scenarios playing out. And I think there are some frisky teams. The way we're going to go about doing this is the teams that I think can finish last in the conference we'll start with, and we'll just work our way up, right? So we're going from the worst case scenario up, okay? And again, every team can have a season from hell where they finish 14th in the conference because everyone got hurt. I'm not factoring that in. I'm thinking realistic worst case scenarios, realistic best case scenarios. Let's just start with the Nets. Obviously, they are a very, very good candidate to finish with not only the worst record in the Eastern Conference, but the worst record in the NBA. I do think there's some secret. This could be one of the worst teams of all time by February. We're talking about, could this be the worst team ever? But when I was looking at their roster, I was a little bit surprised. I thought the best case scenario for them would have been like 14th, right? But there's some talent there where you can maybe talk yourself into them being a little bit more frisky. Not that they're going to be a playing team or anything. I don't see that being a scenario for them whatsoever. I have their best case scenario as finishing 12th in the Eastern Conference. Worst case scenario, finishing dead last, obviously, which in reality would not be the worst case scenario for them. But, let's say Ben Simmons. If we're just playing devil's advocate, Ben Simmons, contract year, says, hey, I've really liked making $40 million a season for doing nothing. If I want to make anywhere near that, I really got to show out this year. And I really got to get some sucker-ass team to buy into me again. He has not been a good player since 2021. And that was the year that he collapsed in the postseason. So we haven't seen him be good in 3+ years, around 3 years, going on 4 years. That's a long time in the NBA. Obviously, he hasn't been healthy, but even when he has played, he's looked like a shell of himself. But if he comes back and is good, if he comes back and he's somewhat good, Nick Claxton's healthy and plays, they can have a pretty good defense that could help them win some games, right? Let's not forget who Nick Claxton is. He just got paid in the offseason. He finished 9th in Defensive Player of the Year voting in 22-23. And he looks like a strong DPOY candidate when they're trying to win. Like, that's just the truth. Marcel! $9.99. I was told to get in here. We aren't friends anymore. Here I go, paying for my friendship. Hashtag this changes everything. Wow. This changes everything. Unbelievable. Thank you, Marcel. See you Sunday. Me and Marcel are going to hoop on Sunday. That's the plan right now, at least. Get some run in. I think TGK is going to be there, too. But anyways, they still have some like good vets. You got Cam Johnson, obviously. You got Dorian Finney-Smith, obviously. Dennis Schroeder is there. And then if Cam Thomas does have that 28 point per game season that we've kind of thought about and dreamed of, he was at 22 points per game last year, 55% true shooting. That jumped up to 25 points per game on 57% true shooting post All-Star break. I could see a world where they get like 28 wins and finish 12th. But their worst case scenario, 15th. Ben Simmons sucks. Cam Thomas is just, mid-20s on middling efficiency. And they're just in complete and total fire sale mode at the deadline. Trading guys like Dorian, trading guys like Schroeder, trading guys like Cam Johnson, just to get their young guys some burn. And you look at their young guys, Noah Clowney, Dariq Whitehead, Zaire Williams, Jalen Wilson. Not a very... it's not something that really grips you, right? And they could have the worst offense in the NBA by a fairly comfortable margin. So those are the scenarios there for the Nets. The Wizards obviously have the potential to finish with the worst record in the Eastern Conference, which, again, I have that listed as a worst-case scenario for them. Realistically, it wouldn't be the worst-case scenario if they just continue their tank to get a high-end draft prospect and what's supposed to be a really good draft. I tried to go higher than 13th, but I really couldn't convince myself of a way where they finish better than that. Jordan Poole would have to have a bounce-back season, right? Post All-Star break last year, 20 points per game, 6 assists per game, 55% true shooting. Yes, this is a terrible, 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 terrible logo. Just have a fucking wizard. Like what? Your mascot is the Wizards. That's such a sick mascot. Yes, best case scenario 13th. Like that's not. Try to talk yourself into them having like playing upside. It really isn't there. The best case scenario again, Jordan Poole is around 20 points per game on good efficiency, or at least around league average efficiency. Alex Sarr, Bub Carrington, Keyshawn George, they look like the best rookie draft class, and Sarr's looked pretty good in preseason so far. Obviously, Bub Carrington was one of the stars of Summer League. So those three look really good as rookies. Jonas Valanciunas, let's not forget that he's there. They were dead last in rebounding a season ago. So Jonas Valanciunas in the mix is going to help them in that regard, and just kind of this veteran big man presence that'll help out their younger guards and stuff. Corey Kispert, can he get to like 40% from three? Opens up the floor. Can Bilal Coulibaly, who's grown a couple inches apparently, can we see that self-creation offensive leap for him? It didn't look great in the Olympics, but, you know. Yeah, their best case is the young talent keeps growing at 8-footers, yes. Their real best case scenario is Bilal shows you shit, Sarr shows you shit, Bub Carrington shows you shit, even if it's in a wasted effort, even if they lose, 60 games. As long as those guys do stuff, you feel good about it. Their worst case scenario is Kuzma, Valanciunas, Brogdon, maybe even Poole are on new teams by the middle of February. Jordan Poole continues to be an inefficient turnover machine, and you're just stuck with that contract entirely. That's actually worse than trading him, I think. You're bottom three on offense and defense. They were 28th in defense last year, 25th in offense last year. And Sarr, as a rookie big, struggle, especially a rookie big whose game is primarily on the perimeter, struggles quite a bit. Bub Carrington isn't as good as he showed in the Summer League. Bilal kind of doesn't show the flashes offensively that you would hope to see in year two from him. And you win 15 games. Like that's the worst case scenario right there for the Wizards. And it's one that you don't really have to bend reality to get to, for just being honest. But again, like them being high in the lottery odds is a good thing for them. The Pistons, I really tried. I really did try to convince myself maybe they could sneak into the play-in tournament. I really, really don't see it. But for the Pistons, this is a similar thing. A best case scenario is you really start to see, all right, we are trending in the right direction, right? The increased floor spacing that you got in the offseason helps out your young guards, Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, right? They took the second fewest threes last year. They were bottom six in three-point accuracy, but they brought in Tim Hardaway Jr., who, we're Mavs fans. We shit on Tim Hardaway Jr. He will help space the floor. He's a volume three-point shooter. That's going to help them out tremendously. Tobias Harris, he can shoot threes. That'll help them out. Malik Beasley, he can shoot threes. That'll help him out. A full year of Simone Fontecchio, that'll help him out from three-point land, right? And then you see the Cade Cunningham breakout, where he was good last year, dude. He was good. The Cade Cunningham stuff, he was good on a weird, fucked up team last year. 22 points per game, career high. 35% from three, career high. 7.5 assists per game, career high. 54% true shooting, career high. 24 points per game on 56% true shooting in 18 games post All-Star break. And that was on a terrible team. And they'll be terrible again. But the floor will be spaced out a little bit more. Jaden Ivey breakout. They're about league average on defense, which I can see. I can see them being around a league average defense. They were 25th last year with the worst half-court defense. But if they're healthy, Cade's a good defender. Sarr is an incredible defender. If he gets more playing time, he's going to be one of the better defenders in the NBA this upcoming season. Jalen Duren. It's been bad for him defensively. Can we see improvements in that regard? Ron Holland, who they drafted 5th overall, strong defender. I can't get to them being a play-in team, especially in an East that's going to be more competitive, right? They went through a lot last year as far as humiliation. No, they did. I don't think they did finish dead last in the East last year. I don't think they're going to get there again. I just think they have more talent than the teams we just talked about. But their worst case scenario is their new additions. I mean, you look at it, we just mentioned them. It's not like Murderer's Row. Their new additions don't really work out, and they all checked out, and they're all traded by the trade deadline. Cade doesn't really take the efficiency lead. I'm hoping he gets like 59% true shooting from Cade this upcoming season. We don't get that. Asar's jumper continues to be terrible, and it really kind of fucks with the spacing and makes it really difficult to put him out there. Jalen Duren's abysmal defense does not improve. Jaden Ivey continues to just kind of float around in this sort of awkward fit next to Cade and some of these other players that they have. That's the worst case scenario. And they're 14th again. And then, if they win 18 games this year and all of those things I listed just happen, they're in a really tough spot. They're in a really tough spot. You probably have to you probably have to break up that backcourt duo. Hornets. So here they are. No, I took last year. I had the Hornets range of outcomes was, I think, the biggest I had. I think it was the 6th seed to the 15th seed. This year I toned it down a little bit. I do think there's a world where they're a play-in team and get past the play-in and play a playoff series. I do think that there's a world where that happens, where they get to 40, 43 wins. LaMelo Ball actually plays basketball and makes an all-star game. 58 total games last 2 seasons. 58 total games. Oh, they upset the Celtics in round 1? The last full season we saw LaMelo Ball, he made the all-star game. I mean, dude, LaMelo is so good. I don't want people to forget how good LaMelo is. I really don't. I really don't. I know. I'm talking myself higher than 8th. Trust me. 8th, I had to look myself in the mirror and say, let's tone it the fuck down. Don't want to embarrass ourselves too much. Brandon Miller, sophomore leap. Over the last 33 games of the season for Miller. 20 points per game, 44% from the field, 37% from 3. A lot of those shots self-created. That is special stuff for a rookie player. He's going to be very, very good in the NBA. And I'm interested to see what a second-year leap looks like for him. Because it could be sneaky all-star upside. Second year, I'm not entirely sure that that's possible, but I don't know. We can easily get to over 20 points per game a season for Brandon Miller. That might be a little bit difficult if LaMelo's healthy and not in prison for a traffic violation, but it's possible. Their offense is around league average. They had the worst transition offense in the NBA last year, which is a little bit surprising considering their roster and the makeup of their team. I expect that to be much different this season. LaMelo should be healthy. Josh Green is going to help them with their transition game. I mean, that's just true. Miles Bridges, a beast in transition. Miles Bridges, can he have a bounce-back season? I mean, he was really, really bad last year. But he kind of feeds off of LaMelo Ball. I mean, in the short amount of time LaMelo played, Miles Bridges' true shooting percentage was 6 full points higher when LaMelo played versus when he didn't. So, just kind of put in the middle of a fucked up situation Miles Bridges did on the basketball court where he was just kind of asked to do way more than he should have been asked to do. It was also a weird year with his contract and stuff, and he's under contract now, so maybe he gets a little bit better. Mark Williams, can he fucking play? Can he play? He's played 62 total games in his career. 62. And he's already dealing with a foot strain. But here are his career per 36 stats. 17 points, 13 rebounds, 4.5 offensive rebounds, and nearly 2 blocks per 36 in his career. He's good. He needs to play basketball. Oh, and also, Trey Mann. Can Trey Mann get some 6th Man of the Year love? He's looked pretty good. He looked pretty good with the Hornets. He's looked pretty good in the preseason. Can Trey Mann get some 6th Man of the Year love? Yes, and they do have Grant Williams. I didn't forget about him. I just didn't list them. Worst case scenario, they're terrible again. LaMelo plays 40 games. Mark Williams plays 30. Brandon Miller, second year. Defenses hone in on him a little bit more. It's a little bit more of a struggle for him. Miles Bridges just kind of peaked a couple years ago, and this is just kind of who he is now as this middling basketball player. And they have the worst defense in the NBA. They were 29th last year. If Mark Williams is hurt and some other guys are hurt, they'll probably be a very, very bad defense yet again. So, I don't know. I really do like the talent on this Hornets team. It's better than people give it credit for. But they got to be healthy. That's really it. Their health issue is bad. And I try to avoid the health stuff for these teams because, again, any team can deal with health. Any team can deal with their team being injured and dead, right? But if it's a team that has dealt with it with regularity or players that have dealt with it with regularity, that's when I factor it in. And that's LaMelo Ball and Mark Williams, unfortunately. The Hawks. Now, I'm giving the Hawks a little bit of love here. You might see 7th. I think that's a little bit high. I think there's a world where they get to 45, 47 wins. Let me explain how it happens. Trae Young, all NBA season. Not out of the realm of possibility at all. We've seen him do it. He kind of has the ball again. They've moved off of DeJounte Murray. They said, all right, Trae, this is your team. Don't have to worry about sharing the backcourt. Don't have to worry about playing off ball, whatever. Just here's the fucking ball. Go to work. Do what you do, right? Jalen Johnson, 50 games last year. Was great in his 50 games. Can he play, 60, 70, 80 games? By the way, last year, and I'm a sucker for this Hawks team. I don't know what it is. Actually, I do know what it is. I'm a Trae Young defender. Okay, I always have been and I always will be. One of the most, I actually think one of the most underrated and disrespected players in the NBA. Full stop. Full stop. Last year, I had their peak being fourth. Their peak being fourth. I think their floor being eighth. Which actually ended up being true. Weren't they the eighth seed? But anyways, Jalen Johnson, can he play 60, 70, 8 games? I know Jalen Johnson already leapt. But can we get to 70 games with that leap as well? No, they made the playoffs. They lost to the Celtics. Wait, did they make the playoffs? I'm getting my years mixed up, I think. That was not this year where they played the Celtics in round 1, was it? No, because that was two years ago. Didn't they take the Celtics to 6? That's right. More upside for the Hawks. They did just have the number 1 overall pick. In Zachary Richichet, he's not a very exciting number 1 overall pick, but he was just the number 1 overall pick. And if he wins Rookie of the Year, I mean, that'll be big for them. If he slots in immediately as somebody who can contribute, that'll be really big for them. Dyson Daniels has shown a good amount of flash and upside, both with the Pelicans and with the Australian national teams in the Olympics. I'm interested in that because that to me is like a better backcourt solution next to Trae Young than DeJounte Murray. Somebody who knows his role offensively, can do some things offensively, but is a really, really, really strong perimeter defender, which Dyson Daniels is. I kind of like that. Larry Nance Jr. is a really strong, depth addition. And guys like Okongwu, I mean, we've been waiting for that breakout. Does that happen finally? There's a world where the Hawks are like sneaky good. But the world where they're bad, and I do think there's a world where they win 24 games in their 13th in the Eastern Conference. It's Trae is just okay, right? Not all NBA, just okay. They need him to be all NBA to be good. Yeah, Kobe Buffkin. How dare I forget Kobe Buffkin? I can't believe I did that. Trae has a decent season, and this could happen. This is a possibility, or he gets traded midseason. I mean, his name has been tossed around in trade rumors enough, and they've denied it. They've categorically denied it. But there's enough smoke that I think that there's been some talks, right? That they could trade Trae Young midseason. Jalen Johnson either doesn't play, 50, 60 games or kind of hits a wall and doesn't have the breakout that we kind of expect. Richichet doesn't look great as a rookie, and they sell off pieces at the deadline, like Clint Capella goes somewhere else, which could seem like a positive, but Okongwu really had a disappointing season last year, and I don't know if he's a center in the NBA. He might be one of these tweeners, which is not good for him. DeAndre Hunter, who hasn't been really good for him, but I could see him getting moved at the deadline. Bogdan, could see him getting moved at the deadline. Bogdan was incredible for them last season. So that's a real scenario that could happen. They've got a wide range of outcomes, I think. I think they can be better than people think. I do think that they could be really bad, though. Next up, the Raptors. So, Jakob Poeltl had that quote at their media day where he's like, yeah, I know we're going to be bad this year. Like, it is what it is. It's, we're not trying to win a championship. And I think people kind of spun that into being like, oh, this team sucks. Like, they're going to be horrible. I do kind of like this roster a little bit. And I think 10th might even be a little bit low. But then I look at the landscape of the league. I think they could get to like 38 wins and make the play-in tournament. I think that's possible for them. Scotty Barnes played in 60 games last year. Their best case scenario is he's healthy and continues to take leaps forward. There's times where he's looked like a potential future MVP candidate. Like, that's just the truth. That's just the truth. Emmanuel Quickley looked really, really good after getting traded there. Plays a really good two-man game with Jakob Poeltl. He got paid in the offseason. They believe in him. They should. He's a really, really solid player. Yes, RJ is already dealing with something. I mean, they're already dealing with something, which is the problem here, because this like group of four that they have, Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Jakob Poeltl, they only played in 234 minutes together last season after they made those trades, but they had a 11 net rating. Like, they kind of shit on teams. It's a little bit interesting. And RJ, after getting traded there, 21 points per game on 61% true shooting. Like, he was really good. He had some really good moments for Canada as well. It kind of looks like this is just going to be who he is. And if that is the case, they're going to be pretty decent this year. They're going to be pretty decent. And I could definitely see them, getting close to that 40-win mark, which in the East would most certainly have them in the play-in tournament. Worst case scenario, though, and that's where I'm getting at, Jeremy. Worst case scenario, 22 to 25 wins. They're 13th in the Eastern Conference. Injuries bite them in the ass. RJ Barrett's already dealing with an AC joint thing, which is out for the preseason. I saw some Raptors people are a little concerned that might linger into the regular season, which wouldn't be good. Jakob Poeltl played 50 games last season. Again, these are guys who deal with injuries, so I don't feel bad factoring that into the worst case scenario for them. And yes, their depth is not very good. They need more depth. They need more talent. Bruce Brown just hasn't been very good since leaving Denver. He's probably going to get traded at some point. It seems like that could happen sooner than later. You look at some of their other their backcourt depth. Davion Mitchell just kind of cast it away, literally salary dumped. Part of a salary dump trade from the Sacramento Kings, just gave his ass away. Jamal Shedd, Jacoby Walter, Grady Dick. We'll see what year two has in store. Showed some things last year, but he was supposed to be one of the more NBA-ready guys in the draft, and that just was not the case. Kelly Olynyk looks a little washed. Their depth is not very good, but they got a good, solid young core. And honestly, them being bad and getting a high lottery pick, I think would be really, really good for them. And I want to say they owe a pick. And I think it's 1 through 10 protected or something, which might incentivize tanking down the stretch. I could be wrong, but I want to say they owe the Spurs a top 10 protected first round pick, which again incentivizes a tank there. The Bulls. Oh, they're good on picks? That was last year? Okay, my bad. All right, that's right. They did convey last year. You're right. Because the Spurs traded that. That was the pick the Spurs traded to the Timberwolves, right? The Bulls. So I struggle. I really can't see a world where the Bulls are horrendous. I do see a world where they're around 500 to above 500. Yet again, that's who the Bulls have been forever. And they're in the play-in tournament. This scenario is Josh Giddey kind of thrives in this new role that he's found himself in, where he just is the guy offensively and he can do Josh Giddey things on the basketball court, and 32 games without Shea in his career, where he was kind of the lead ball handler. 17 points a game, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. So, I mean, that's not bad. I do think this Giddey addition, I think it'll work out a little bit better than people expect. Lonzo is doing things. That's would help them out tremendously, obviously. Zach LaVine is actually healthy and plays pretty well. 25 games last season. 2 years ago, he did play 77 games and averaged nearly 25 points per game. Bazulis gets Rookie of the Year buzz. He was a very, very highly touted prospect a year before the draft. He did drop a little bit, and even going, what did he end up going, 11th? That even felt a little bit low for him. Like, he was getting top 5 buzz all draft process and then dropped a little bit. But there's a scenario where he gets some Rookie of the Year buzz. Kobe White continues his growth. Should have won Most Improved Player last year, 100%. 19 points per game last year, career high for him. 5 assists per game last year, career high. Can he continue to contribute at that level? And they're about league average offensively. That would be a best case scenario for them. They were 22nd last year. I think with Giddey, if they run a little bit quicker, if Zach LaVine's back and is doing things, if Vucevic doesn't shoot 18% from three, I don't know what he shot from three. That's what it felt like. They could be around a league average offense. So I saw Ben Simmons is plus 900 to win Rookie of the Year. I saw that meme. I don't know. I could see a world. And even if their worst case scenario for me, I think is something like 33 wins. And they're the 11th or maybe 12th seed. Now, the thing is, somebody mentioned it earlier in the chat. They do owe a top 10 protected pick this year. I think it's to the Spurs. I think that was still for the DeRozan thing. Does that sound right? Their pick is top 10 protected this year. So, if they are kind of at the 10th seed, 11th seed, there might be some real incentive down the stretch for them to tank their asses off. Another worst case scenario for them record wise, this would be good for them, but I'm just saying for the record, they find a trade partner for Zach LaVine and Vucevic, but their return's not good. Right? Can't imagine they get something for those guys that like helps them out in terms of winning basketball games currently. Or Another worst case scenario, they don't find trade partner for a guy like Zach LaVine, and the vibes are completely and totally fucked. They have a bottom 3 defense. They were 22nd in defense last year, but they were 5 points per 100 possessions worse on defense with Alex Caruso off the court. Now he's gone, obviously, so that defense is going to take a pretty significant step back. Already wasn't very good. Giddey just looks like a jag. Giddey just looks like another dude. And that does end up looking like a bad trade. And their depth has potential to be pretty bad. Jalen Smith, I do like that signing for him. That could be a signing that flops, though. P. Will just, at this point in time in Patrick Williams' career, is it safe to say he's just not that good of a player? Like, we've all been waiting for it. He might not be that good. Javon Carter was terrible last year. Ayo Dosunmu has a weird season with his role kind of in flux. Dalen Terry doesn't really progress. Bazzulla struggles as a rookie. I could see all those things happening as well, which would have them. I have them at 11th. I say all those things. It could be much worse. I don't know why I was so lenient here with the Bulls. The Magic. So I do think the Magic have kind of this wide range of outcomes. And having them here at 9th really just goes to show that there's a good amount of teams fighting for this middle class here in the Eastern Conference. Here's their scenario for here's their high-end scenario. I think 50 to 53 wins, and I do think they can finish as high as second in the Eastern Conference, 1,000%. Paolo takes a leap forward, right? The Magic, and when I say leap forward for Paolo, I'm really meaning efficiency-wise. We see that efficiency continue to uptick for Paolo. That's really the thing currently for him. They are 24-6 when Paolo shot 50% or better last year. 24-6. Like, if Paolo, and I know that's kind of a stupid fucking stat. Yes, obviously, if our star player plays well, we're going to win. But with their defense and how good their defense is, if they just get like good performances from their two main guys, they're really hard to beat. They are 9-14 when he shot under 40%. He averaged 27 points per game on 55% true shooting in the playoffs. I thought he was awesome in that series. I really do. And that really solidified. I was already really high on Paolo. That postseason series really solidified him for me. I think he's going to be fucking awesome. And I'll just tell you right now, I'll spoil. I don't really know why I have them 9th here. Well, we'll get to it. But I definitely think they trend way more towards up here whenever I do my actual predictions. Franz rediscovers his three-point stroke. They were 20-7 last year when he just shot 33% or better from three. 33%. 20-7. When he shot 33%. That's not even good. Can he just not be shit? That's it. The Suggs three-point improvement is real and continues, and we already know how great he is defensively. Jonathan Isaac plays 60-plus games. Can we get to that? Can we get a somewhat healthy Jonathan Isaac season? We've been asking for it forever. But they had a plus 12 net rating in 900 minutes when he was on the court last year. Plus 12. They were shitting on teams. Anthony Black, year 2. right? Fultz is gone. Ingles is gone, but that means a guy like Anthony Black is ready to step forward. He showed a decent amount of stuff his rookie season. KCP, he's here. He helps out on offense without taking anything away from your defense. And they have the best defense in the NBA with a league average offense. They were 22nd in offense last year with the third best defense. Best defense in the NBA with a league average offense. That's a possibility for them. Worst case scenario, they're the 9th seed, 43 to 47 wins. You know, keep in mind, finishing like 9th in the regular season in the East could just mean you're one game behind the 5th seed. Like that could be what we end up seeing. The argument. The rest of the East just got a little bit better as well. Teams are going to be more healthy in the Eastern Conference. The top end teams have gotten a little bit better as well. So that might hurt the middle class a little bit. Paolo's efficiency remains a little frustrating. He's still around below league average. Franz is just a complete and total non-factor from three. And I think this year, if we start to see that, it's really going to hurt the offense. Because I think Franz had at least enough reputation to be like, all right, we're gonna we have to sort of respect that shot. Where if he's 20% from three this year, teams are not going to respect him whatsoever from three. Jonathan Isaac misses time. They're bottom 5 on offense. KCP kind of struggles without Jokic, which we've seen players leave the Nuggets and not look anywhere near as good, but KCP has proven that he's a championship level player elsewhere. So that I say that out loud. I do see a world where their offense is really bad. And it kind of hurts them. But again, I'm just going to tell you right now, because some people are surprised to see I had them, their low case scenario 9th. I think they trend much more towards this scenario in my brain. The Heat. I kind of like their roster. I don't know. This feels like a classic Heat season. Does it not? Like this time, everyone is writing them off. Everyone is saying, all right, this is the time. This is the real death of the Miami Heat. They can't come back from this. I think there's a world where they win 47, 50 games. Jimmy Butler is locked in and plays most of the regular season. He did play 60 games last year, which is good regular season-wise for Jimmy Butler. They were +5 when he was on the court, so he still impacts the game tremendously. And they say that he's locked in. They say that he's locked in. Terry Rozier, I thought he showed some things, some flashes for the Heat last year, especially whenever all of their guys were hurt, and Terry Rozier is pretty much the only player they had that could create offense for himself. He's here for a full offseason. Don't forget, Terry Rozier is a good basketball player, man. He's a good basketball player. Khalil Ware makes an immediate impact. Some people have said, could this be a Derek Lively thing, where they draft this center and he ends up becoming just huge for them? This could allow them, if Khalil Ware's good, this could allow them to have either a monster backup center next to Bam Adebayo, or it could allow them to play Bam at the 4 and have Khalil Ware play the 5. Let's not forget, the last 20 games of the season, Bam averaged over a 3-point attempt a game. Jovic takes a leap forward. I so want to predict Jovic to win Most Improved Player. I don't think it happens. I don't think that there's even a world where it happens. But Jovic could take a step forward. And they are built. Their team, with their assets, with their contracts, they are built to make a sizable move at the deadline. I've heard Miami Heat fans, but Miami Heat podcasters and people on Twitter say that this feels like a trade deadline where they really make a move. Like a sizable move to try and improve their team. And they have a top 3 defense this year with the league average offense. They were 5th in defense last year. We know Spoelstra defenses are always going to be good. And they were 21st offensively last year. They dealt with so many injuries, and they were still the 13th best half-court offense. So the pieces are there for a good offense. I think this team's going to be better than people think. I think even their low-case scenario is around 500. And that's Jimmy is either hurt or that situation gets weird. Let's not forget, he's on a contract year. They haven't worked out an extension. It felt like at times it was almost a foregone conclusion that he was going to get traded. Could those rumors kind of re-spark, and that leads to things being weird? I could see their offense kind of really struggling a little bit at times. Being bottom 10 in offense again would hurt them. Their depth issues. Their depth is a little bit rough. their backcourt depth. Tyler Hero, he's good. He's nice. Terry Rozier, he's good. He's nice. But then it kind of drops off a cliff, like Josh Richardson, Alec Burks. This team hasn't really been like the picture of health either. So I could really see these depth issues coming to bite them in the ass. But I don't know. It's dangerous sleeping on this Heat team. And I think this is another year where it might be a little dangerous sleeping on the Heat. The Pacers. I do think there's a world where they finish second in the East. I feel like they're the easy, they made the conference finals. They had a very easy path, right? And I think everyone is sort of, the Heat are looming dangerously. Everyone sort of pencils them in as the team that's going to take a step backwards. And that kind of makes some sense. But let's dive into it a little bit. Their best case scenario, I think they could get to 53 wins. Tyrese Halliburton, let's not forget, okay? Let's not forget who he was before he got hurt last season. Looked like he was cruising to a first-team All-NBA selection. Looked like he was cruising to top 5 in MVP voting. 24 points per game, nearly 13 assists per game, on 40% from 3, on 8.5 attempts per game in 32 games. Now, I do want to say, I saw somebody tweet this out yesterday, and I actually 100% agree with this, is it is very weird how we take those 30 games from Tyrese Halliburton, and we sort of be like, oh, well, that's who Tyrese Halliburton is. Like, that's who he is. Those 30 games. Or with other players, like Trae Young, for example, it's like, here's 5 years of Trae Young being fucking awesome. So I don't want to, like, say that's who Tyrese Halliburton is, those 32 games. But I don't know. Andrew Nembhard. They paid him in the offseason. He looked incredible in the playoffs. He was good in the Olympics. 15 points per game, 5.5 assists per game, 48% from 3 in their conference finals run. He was so big for them with Tyrese Halliburton dealing with injuries. Could we get a big step forward from him? Siakam. They have fucking Pascal Siakam. I feel like Siakam's become very underrated, which is funny because he's always been underrated, and then he was so underrated that he almost became overrated because everyone kept calling him underrated, but now he is actually underrated, I think. They could have the best offense in the NBA this year. They were second last year, but first before Tyrese Halliburton hurt his hamstring. So we could definitely see a world where the Indiana Pacers are the best offense in the league. Benedict Mathurin, he is back. He's healthy. He strengthens that bench unit. Jarris Walker shows some flashes, and he's ready to go. Wait, why can't I talk today? You guys know I love Jarris Walker. What did I have him on my draft big board? 3rd? Might be a little too high. The draft might not be my thing. The draft might not be my thing. I had Omax higher than Derek Lively on my draft big board. Worst case scenario, I do think there's a world where they're 44 wins, 47 wins, and they're the 8th seed in the play-in tournament. Again, they're sort of middle class in the East. They're going to be dueling with each other. You have the Bucks, the Sixers, the Knicks, who are like, you kind of assume will be that 2 through 4 range. But then you have teams like the Magic, teams like the Pacers, who I think could get into that mix as well, but are also this sort of middle class that, 1 or 2 things go wrong, and the East is strong enough that you might fuck around and be the 8th seed if you have like a month-long bad stretch. I could see something similar happening to the Pacers that happened to the Kings a couple years ago, where they try to sacrifice some offense that make their defense better, and in return, the thing that made them really, really potent, their offense, just isn't that good anymore, and then their team is just not that good anymore. They still, no matter what, they still have a size issue. Siakam definitely helps with that, but they don't really have the wings with any real size. Like, they're relying on Nesmith, who I do think is a dog. I think he plays up in size, but he's still small. Nembhard is still kind of small, right? Hard-nosed defender, but small. This is where you could see like a Jarris Walker. Obi Toppin has good length, but I don't really think he's a defender. And there's some front court depth issues that I think they have that could come back to bite them in the ass if something happens to Miles Turner or something in that regard. So I could see a world where they're kind of one bad month, like they have a bad January, and now they're just kind of the 8th seed. The Sixers. So one of the busiest teams, if not the busiest team, not just of the offseason, but in a long time. When was the last time we saw a team have that big of a shakeup in the offseason? Like, it feels like it never happens like that anymore. The Nets. Do you think there's a world where they get to mid-50 in wins, and they're the second seed? Embiid's healthy, plays 60-plus games, while they're still sort of making sure that he's fully healthy going into the postseason. Paul George is healthy, and he just sort of thrives as this third option who creates when he has to create, shoots, good-looking threes, and just kind of plays his game, can focus a little bit more on defense. Tyrese Maxey, is there another step forward for Maxey? Is there something else he can get to? He averaged 26 points per game, 5.5 assists per game in 34 games without Embiid last year. On average efficiency, 56% true shooting. Is there another leap forward? He was fucking awesome in the playoffs for them. He was incredible in that Knicks series. Is there even more that Tyrese Maxey can tap into to be a legit All-NBA level player? Jared McCain, could he? I think there's a world where Jared McCain floor spacing off the bench becomes pretty important for them. I don't know if there's going to be Rookie of the Year love or anything like that, but could definitely see a world where his floor spacing becomes important. And there's definitely a world where this is both a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. They were 14th on offense last year, 11th on defense last year. If Embiid's healthy, they're going to be a top 10 defense and a top 10 offense, I think. So it really comes back to Embiid being healthy. That's really it for the Sixers. If he is healthy, he's that good of a player. He's that big of a difference maker. He's that big of a floor raiser that they will be a really good basketball team if he plays. Worst case scenario, Embiid is injured, or they take it really easy with him. He only played in 39 games last season, and even only playing 39 games, he was still dealing with shit in the postseason. I could see them just being 55 games for Embiid, and that's what we want. Any ankle thing, you're out. Any knee thing, you're out. We're not running you out there anymore, playing you 38 minutes a game with a fucked up knee. We're not doing that. We're not rushing you back. We need you to be fully healthy for the postseason. Paul George, he played in 74 games last year, but the 4 years before that, 56, 31, 54, 48. Hasn't really been that healthy over the last 5 or 6 years. Or, again, they could say, we're cool with being the fucking 6th seed. We're cool with being the 7th, 8th seed in the play-in tournament. As long as Embiid and Paul George are healthy in the playoffs, that's all we care about. Their bench depth, I think they did a pretty good job sort of putting this team together in the offseason, but their bench is still old as dirt. Kyle Lowry, he was decent for the Sixers last year, but he's 38 years old. Reggie Jackson, 34 years old, did not look good at all for the Nuggets. Eric Gordon, 35 years old. There's a world where they're the 7th seed, but it's kind of by design, if that makes sense. The Bucks. I do think the Bucks, if some weird shit happens to the Celtics, I do think the Bucks could get the 1 seed. I'm higher on the Bucks than I think most people are. For all of the shit that we gave Dame and Giannis in that duo for not working out, they were +9 when those two were on the court last year with a 123 offensive rating. They were really, really good when those two shared the floor together. And just when they're core 4 guys, Giannis, Dame, Brook Lopez, Chris Middleton, when those 4 are on the court, 677 minutes, a +16 net rating. I mean, they just obliterated teams. That's still a really, really good group. Best case scenario, Giannis wins MVP. He averaged 30 points per game last season, 11.5 rebounds per game, 6 assists per game. Great playmaking stuff from Giannis last year. That was a career high. 65% true shooting, that was a career high. Finished 4th in MVP voting. He had a really, really good season last year. Brook Lopez, can he still keep it going? I mean, I feel like he's defying age, and it just feels like this is it for Brook Lopez, and every time it feels like that, we're proven wrong. Bubba, welcome to the Slightly Delusional Club. Their defense was 6 points per 100 possessions better with him on the floor last year. Brook Lopez, despite his age and despite how slow he looks, he's still very important for their defense. Chris Middleton, the ankle stuff is very concerning, but he had 24 points per game in that series against the Knicks. He was really good. He was really, really good in that series. He was awesome. Gary Trent Jr., really, really, really good offseason pickup for them. Crazy that's the league minimum. I heard this stat on the All City podcast that he was best in the league last year at wide open threes, 51%. 51% on wide open threes, Gary Trent Jr. was. Action Jackson! I love me some Action Jackson. And can their defense be top 10 this year? Last year it was 19th, which was just really weird. Really, really weird. Can they climb back into the top 10? If that's the case, they can be contending for a 1 seed if the Celtics slip up a little bit. Absolutely. Absolutely. Worst case scenario, here's the worst case scenario for you. With Doc Rivers there, with this sort of uneasy feeling with Giannis. There is kind of this weird feeling with Giannis. And their group is old. They have no assets. They have no young talent. So it feels kind of now or never. There's a world where they get off to a slow start and the vibes are really, really fucked. Like, the vibes are terrible. It just sort of snowballs a little tiny bit. That's kind of what happened to them last year. The vibes are bad, and they never fully recovered from their vibes being terrible. Dame, he is 34. He was awesome last year. He played in 73 games last year. It's the most he's played since 2019. You know, he's a guard who relies a lot on explosiveness, and we've seen with these smaller guards who do rely on explosiveness, is that can go overnight. And once it's gone, it's gone. I don't think that'll happen this year, but it is something to watch, and it's part of the worst case scenario for them. Brook Lopez is 36 years old, and he's definitely slowed down. He's definitely looks like he's moving in fucking quicksand. He's still really important to their defense, but if he gets even slower or that rim protection's not quite there anymore, that hurts them tremendously. And their depth, which I think is kind of a problem, comes back to bite them in the ass. And if that happens, we're looking at 46, 49 wins, 7th seed, disappointing season. Now what? Now what happens with this team? The Cavaliers just feels like a sort of safe floor team. As long as they're healthy, they're going to be, contending for home court advantage. And that's just kind of that. I can see them get to mid-50 wins, something that they've done. I could see them do that. Can Evan Mobley finally take this leap? Can he finally do it? Over the last 12 regular season games, 2 3-point attempts per game, he shot 45% on those. Now, 12 games isn't shit, but does that mean something? Can Darius Garland return to form? 18 points per game, 56% true shooting in 57 games last year. He was awful throughout the postseason for them, just complete and total no-show at times when they really needed him to show up. He dealt with different injuries throughout the season. 21 points per game on 8 assists 2 years ago, 21 points per game on 8.5 assists 3 years ago, and made the All-Star game. Can we get a return to form? Please, Darius, I love you. I've said in the past, and I don't believe this anymore, but I've said this in the past, I thought Darius Garland was going to win assist titles in his career. Donovan Mitchell, can he make All-NBA? Again, he was awesome last year. Can we get a repeat season from Donovan Mitchell? I don't see why not. Can they land a forward at the trade deadline? Is there an option out there? Is Cam Johnson? That feels like the perfect player for them is Cam Johnson. I don't know how they can make it work. Can they land a guy like that at the deadline that just sort of solidifies that 5th spot in their rotation? We already know who their 4 guys are. It's kind of a revolving door. Strus, Okoro, Dean Wade sometimes. Like, it's a revolving door of guys. Can they finally address that and get somebody who they can just plug and play there? And can they be top 10 in both offense and defense this year? They were 18th in offense last year, 7th in defense. It's possible. And if all those things happen, or some of those things happen, 55 wins. They'll be fucking good. Let's not forget how good they looked at times last year. Worst case scenario, their offense is bottom 10. Their offense takes a step backwards. Mobley doesn't really take the leap forward that we're expecting. Garland, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's a confidence thing or if it's just this fit next to Donovan Mitchell, but for whatever reason just cannot return to form and just looks like, who he was last year, which was an okay guard. And if those things happen, I could see a world where the vibes start to get a little bit fucked. We talk about vibes a lot here. They are important. It's like real base level analysis. It doesn't mean shit, but vibes are important. I could see a world where their defense takes a small step backwards, and if their depth gets tested, that's a little scary. They're not the deepest team. They have some interesting guys here and there, but I don't know. If that happens, 47 wins, 49 wins, 7 seed in the play-in tournament, don't feel great about that. The Knicks. Do you think that there's a world where they finish with the best record in the Eastern Conference? They need much better health this year. All the injuries they dealt with last year. The Cat and Jalen Brunson two-man game. Big Bodega, he had a great game last night. Cat and Brunson, the two-man game is next to impossible to stop. Deuce McBride, can he sort of solidify himself as this real sixth man of the year candidate? They hate him. Tyler Kolek, some people love him. Is he ready for rotation minutes? Just kind of makes you forget about Dante DiVincenzo a little bit. And here's the thing. They still have trade assets. They still have picks. They still have tradable contracts. If there's like holes that pop up on their roster, they can make moves at the trade deadline to improve those things. So I do think 55 to 59, 60 wins maybe could be in play with this team if they're healthy. OG's a guy who has not been healthy throughout his career. Mitchell Robinson already hurt, not playing the entire calendar year of 2024. We already know all of that stuff. So their depth is going to be tested immediately. But they're fucking good, and they're built for this. They're really built for the playoffs, but they're going to be a great regular season team as well. Their worst case scenario, I could see 47 to 50 wins, still a really high floor. OG misses some time, which we should almost just kind of expect at this point. Their new lineup takes a little bit of time to gel. We've seen that happen from time to time where teams get off to slow starts and then figure it out, but that does affect your record. Deuce McBride doesn't really look like the guy that we hope he can be, and their depth is greatly tested. And Cat at the 5, could that take away some from the defense? This defense that we're all sort of projecting to be one of the best ones in the league. Is Cat just this glaring weakness that's almost impossible to like work around because you don't have a guy like Rudy Gobert next to? I don't know. I think they're going to be good. And the Celtics, the final team here in the Eastern Conference. I do think that they'll be the number 1 seed. Again, I know that they're dealing with some front court problems already, but I do think there's a world where they're at 64, 67 wins again. Absolutely think that there's a world where that happens. Tatum and Brown, it's corny. It's a little lame, but they seem hungry still. We've seen times in the past where guys win, especially guys who have been trying for so long. They get that ring, and then they sort of just, all right, foot off the gas a little bit, or at least maybe in the regular season. We know we can do it now. Let's just get there. But those two are going to be hungry. Tatum's going to try to win MVP this year. I promise you that. Jaylen Brown's going to try and prove that he belonged on the Team USA roster. He deserved those MVP votes. Definitely a world where they can finish with the best offense and the best defense in the league. They were number 1 in offense last year, 3rd in defense last year. And there's a world where those front court problems are just completely overblown, at least in the regular season. KP comes back in January, and he's healthy. Horford looks fine. But until then, Tillman and Cornette just fill in perfectly fine. And they're still really good. There's a world where Tatum wins the MVP. There's a world where Peyton Pritchard is getting 6th man of the year votes. Like, there's a world where that happened. And if that's the case, you know, we're pushing mid-60s wins again. Worst case scenario, I put down here, I still think their floor is 54, 57 wins, which would have them 2nd seed, probably even 1st, but 2nd seed if another team in the East sort of shows up. That scenario, they have a bit of a championship hangover. I don't get the feeling that Joe Mazzulla is a guy who will allow that to happen, but championship hangover, they're just kind of coasting through the regular season. The team prioritizes health and rest over regular season wins. Again, not something I expect to see, but let's just get back to the playoffs healthy, and we know how good we are. I definitely a world where KP is out longer than expected and is sort of rusty and trying to get his legs under him when he comes back and is not anywhere near the KP that they saw for most of the season last year. But even then, they were plus 11 when he was on the court, dominating teams. They were plus 10 when he was off. Oh, wait, that's the other way around. They were plus 11 with him off the court, plus 10 with him on the court. Just fucking stupid, man. They got some older dudes. Drew's getting up there in age. Horford's getting up there in age. So if those guys sort of lose a step, obviously they won't be as great. But, dude, they're still going to be really good. Like, we could be approaching a dynasty. Like, that's just kind of where we're at. This team is stacked.